Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this brand new episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. Dan Casper here with you, and on this episode of the podcast, we got a little walk-off at the end where we're going to talk a little Ohtani. I bust out the crystal ball and make some sports predictions. Also, we're going to talk about the trades that made you go, wow, the first moment you heard about them. The first moment, not years after, but the first initial moment you heard about that trade. I've got my list. We'll see if ours match up. But we begin this episode of the podcast with a little, here's the thing. So here's the thing. I got to admit it. The NBA Finals, better than I thought it was going to be. Closer than I thought it was going to be. I thought the Thunder would win this in 5. The Pacers are proving to be, or continue to prove to be, a major thorn in the side for every team that they have gone up against in this postseason. As much as it pains me to say it because I'm not a Pacers fan, and they bug me, especially Tyrese, this is a team that doesn't know how to go away. They don't know how to die. This is a gutty, gritty team that I just have to tip my cap to. I got to tip my cap to the Indiana Pacers. I would not be surprised if they go on to win this thing. And I think what they're doing is pretty damn impressive. And I got to admit, I did not expect this. I thought, okay, getting by the Bucks, sure. But to get to the point where they're at now, and they easily could be up 3-1, and they could be one win away from this thing if it wasn't for a Thunder comeback in Game 4. So I got to admit that this finals has gone better. I shouldn't say that. Let me rephrase it. Has been closer than I thought it would be. So tip of the cap to the Pacers, and it's not over with yet. I'm still taking the Thunder to win this. But I could definitely see this series going 7 now. It would not surprise me if it would go 7. This has been a very entertaining series, a very close series, and I think it has blown the door off a lot of expectations. Same with the Stanley Cup Finals. That one I think a lot more people knew was going to be a good one and a close one, and it has been exactly that. Stanley Cup Finals, playoff hockey is still proven to be one of the best things in the sports world. More people need to jump on the bandwagon of watching playoff hockey. It is. I give again a tip of the cap to my college roommates for hooking me on that. They said playoff hockey was nothing like any other. I'm not a big hockey fan. I started to watch playoff hockey, and man, it's awesome. It's awesome. In fact, I was watching it a little bit before I went to college, but got more into it after my roommates were really into it in college. So. Before we get to our trades and crystal ball picks, I got to give another tip of the cap. So on our episodes of the Man Cave Podcast, we try to give shout-outs and tip of the caps to people or teams or anybody out there. And, just for doing something awesome or doing something good in the sports world, I think we got to give it to J.J. Spaun, who captured his first major title, winning the U.S. Open this past weekend. But the way he did it, too, birdied the 17th hole to take a one-stroke lead. Then he made a 64.5-foot birdie putt on 18 to win it. That was a fantastic putt. Just needed a 2-putt. Was probably thinking, just get it close. Right? Just get it close, hit the second one in to win it. And that's exactly what he did. It was a fantastic, dramatic ending. The only guy to finish under par for the U.S. Open. I know there was a lot of golfers who were pissed at the course. They were frustrated for how tough it was, locker damages, clubs being thrown. I loved it. I love it. And a tip of the cap to Oakmont for making it a very difficult course. I don't have a problem with only one player finishing 1 under par. It gave me impressions back to Bethpage Black when Tiger Woods defeated Sergio Garcia in that U.S. Open, and that course was incredibly difficult. It's okay for these golfers to finish over par and only have one golfer finish 1 under. And nobody finished even. Tip of the cap to the course, tip of the cap to the USGA for doing that. All right, let's talk some trades. What are the trades during your lifetime that went down that made you go, whoa, or wow, or dang, or other words that we can't say right now that are inappropriate? It doesn't have to be, like a trade that ended up being a great trade or a bad trade. It's just that your instant reaction was like, whoa, wow, sort of thing. Like when you first heard about it, you first read about it, whatever the case may be. And part of it, why we're bringing this up, is because today, June 16th in 1975, was that Kareem was traded from the Bucks to the Lakers. That's a wild trade, I would imagine, for a lot of people who heard about that at that time. Now, there was obviously, rumblings and talk beforehand, but got me thinking, what are some of the other trades? What are some of the other trades that just made you go, what the heck, or wow? So here's my list. Again, these are not trades that necessarily worked out, were the best trades of all time, or were the worst trades of all time. But these are just a few that I can still remember thinking about, or still remember going back and remembering what my reaction was like. And I think that's the big part of this, is like when you remember the reaction you had when you first heard about that trade. I am, so a few people mentioned Favre getting traded to the Packers. I am going to go Favre to the Jets for this reason. Not that I was surprised that he was traded, but just more of like, wow, we actually got to this point. This actually happened. Wow. Favre is actually going to play for a different team besides the Packers. So for me, that was like a little bit of a different wow, because it was like, it's actually going to happen. This is going to happen. I'm going to see Favre play for a different team. Like, this wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to be a Packer through and through. Yes, he had Atlanta, but it was like we didn't really count that. And here we are. And just adding that whole summer of 2008 and all the drama, it's like, oh, that really happened. So it's a little bit of a different wow type of feeling, but I had to throw it on there because maybe for me, for somebody, in my age range and such, that was a big, big moment, a huge moment. I still remember finding out when Ray Allen was traded from the Bucks to the Supersonics, Gary Payton, and I remember coming home from school, and one of my routines every day coming home from school was logging up on the old dial-up compact computer, and the first website I would go to was Yahoo Sports, sports.yahoo.com, and seeing the headlines from the day, the top news from the day. And I remember logging on, and the thing that popped up was Ray Allen being traded to the Supersonics. And I was like, what? I still remember that was a big, like, whoa moment for me for trade-wise. Like, wow. Another one, I'll stay with the NBA. Luka. I mean, I know it's not, we probably don't have a lot of NBA fans or diehard NBA fans, but I mean, Luka being traded, still kind of in his prime, and I get it with some of the other rumblings about his physical shape that he's in and such, but the fact that, like, that kind of came out of nowhere, or they kept it really under wraps, that was one that was like, huh? Like, is this April Fool's? Do we got to double check? Especially in social media world, are these fake accounts that are tweeting this? Are these like, is this really happening? And yeah, it did. It did. So that for sure was like, uh-huh. a wow type of trade. Another one for me, nobody mentioned this one. I'm going Devontae. When Devontae was traded from the Packers to the Raiders. Because I still remember that. I was sitting down in my man cave. And, because that offseason, we kind of had the thought of like, okay, Rodgers is back. Devontae's going to be there too. Like, Rodgers isn't coming back unless Devontae's there. And the fact that Devontae was traded after Rodgers committed to coming back, that was like a whoa type of thing. It's like, what? Like, so that to me, I mean, I remember like scrolling on my phone or such, and I think it was Schefter's tweet I first saw. It was the 2 picks and such for Devontae, and I was like, wait a minute. Because all offseason we were saying like, hey, if Rodgers is coming back, I mean, Devontae's coming back too. And the fact that Rodgers committed and then Devontae still was traded, it was like, wait a minute here. Something seems a little off. So that definitely made me go, hey now, whoa, wow, whatever word. Dang. That one caught me off guard. Few people mentioned it, but yes, the CC Sabathia one too in 08 for the Brewers. And 08 was like a transition year for me as a Brewers fan. Because throughout my whole childhood, Brewers stunk. They stunk. I mean, rarely ever got to see them on TV. Had to listen to Euchre. I shouldn't say had to, but because listening to Euchre was awesome. But that was the only way to really follow the Brewers, or it was like highlights on ESPN or such, if there were even any highlights at that point. They stunk. Okay? It was what it was. And 08, that 07, 08 type of season were kind of that transition years for me as a Brewers fan. I was in college, started to pay a little bit more attention to the Brewers because, they got these youngsters that are playing some really good ball. These guys named Prince Fielder and JJ and Ricky and Corey, and then you get this rookie named Braun coming in. And it's like, oh, they're winning some games. And then 08, it's like, okay, they're winning games. Could they actually make the postseason? Am I, as a Brewers fan, going to experience a Brewers postseason? And then, the big trade wants or the big prize out there in the trade market was CC out of Cleveland. No way would the Brewers actually do it. Yes, way the Brewers actually did it. They acquired CC. And that just, like, I think blew every Brewers fan their socks off. And to make it even better was, like, I think the trade surpassed any expectations. Like, CeCe just absolutely dominated, and they make the postseason that year. But the fact that they did it, that they acquired perhaps the biggest prize in the trade market in Major League Baseball, was, I think, just one of the biggest wow moments. And it just happened to be with my favorite team, my favorite baseball team, and I think for a lot of listeners, their favorite baseball team too. I was like, beg pardon? They did it? They actually did what? Wow. Okay. All right. For me, I thought about the Randy Moss one, getting traded to the Patriots. I think for me at that point, I would have had a bigger wow moment if it actually was to the Packers. Like if Ted Thompson actually sent over a higher draft pick to acquire Randy Moss. That to me would have, like, then it was to the Patriots, and I'm like, oh, of course. Just kind of like, yeah, get it. Sort of thing. I mean, it was like, oh, hey, now Patriots actually bring in, Randy Moss. We'll see what Randy Moss. I don't think anybody really, I think there was high expectations, but did anybody think about like record-breaking offense and how many touchdowns he had and such? I mean, it was just for that year, that 07 year, it was just an absolutely perfect perfect match made. So for me, there was, I think, disappointment in one breath that they didn't acquire Randy for the Packers. I think a lot of Packers fans were kind of intrigued about the possibility. I still remember watching that draft, and the rumors and the rumblings running rampant. Could the Packers trade for Randy Moss? I still remember it was still the 2-day draft, and when it ended up being the Patriots, I think I was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, sort of thing. It made sense. I was trying to think of some other. For the Packers, in an essence, there wasn't a whole lot of trades to really like make you go, wow. The Rodgers to the Jets one, way different feeling than Favre getting traded to the Jets. Just a completely different feeling. That was, you didn't have the whole retirement coming out of retirement sort of. I mean, it was different. And I think Favre kind of set up like, okay, if Favre could play for a different team, it could happen to Rodgers too. I think maybe we were a little surprised that it went down the same path as the Favre ordeal. But playing with a different team, nah. Now, if we added free agents to the list, I think, yes, you look at the Charles Woodson one, it's like, oh, wow, okay, they got him. I think definitely would probably be, we talk about free agents. Reggie White. I was a wee little lad. So, still didn't really, at that point in time in my youth, didn't understand the whole free agency concept. Maybe didn't grasp the significance of that signing at that point. I mean, Reggie was my first favorite Packer. But I got to imagine, maybe for some of our listeners who are just a little bit older than me that had a better understanding and a better concept of what that move meant, that probably was like a free agent signing that made you go, wow, sort of thing. Trying to think of some. I mean, okay, what about this trade? I think this trade definitely falls into it, and nobody else said it, and it just popped in my head. So I'm guilty too, but it just popped into my head. Damian Lillard to the Bucks. That one is on my list. And I can't believe I forgot about that one. But that one for me is definitely on the wow. Because I think there was just this, again, to kind of refresh it from a couple years ago, it felt like a foregone conclusion it was going to be Miami. Like it felt like Dame only wanted Miami. Dame was only going to accept a trade to Miami. Even though there was some discourse between the two in terms of trade compensation. Like there was a lot of, and it took it was going throughout this whole offseason, right? But it felt like eventually it was going to be Miami. And, it was like, oh, but could the Bucks do it? Yeah, but no. But then they did it. That like they actually did it. That they acquired Damian Lillard and pardon? And then remember when he got to Milwaukee like a day after or 2 days later, the crowd, like the city had this whole event when Dame was flying in, and he was like hours late too. But remember like the social media posts and videos and news crews following it all, and it was just like, holy, they made this whole event. He pulls up, walks to the stadium. I mean, the fans were going nuts and crazy and such. So yes, the Dame trade, 100%. I can't believe I forgot about that one. But I remember like thinking they pulled that thing off. It sucked that we were losing Drew Holiday. But the fact that they got Damian Lillard, I think when we were like, no, that they can't pull that off. But the fact that they pulled it off was like, holy cow. Holy cow. So, again, not looking at trades after the fact. Not looking at trades that, ended up being really crappy ones or really good ones or hurt your division rivals after the fact. We're looking for trades that at that moment when it went down and you were alive, you were like, whoa. Because a few of you are still texting in ones that maybe you weren't around for, or you're kind of going like, this was the best trade or this is the worst trade. Looking at trades that just made you go like, eyes wide open, like, oh man, they got that guy. Wow, that's a pretty shocking move. So, what other ones are out there? I mean, we got a lot of common ones out there. Quite a few people already mentioned Herschel Walker. Quite a few already mentioned CC Sabathia. What other ones are we missing? Hit me up. Let me know. All right? We're going to play a little crystal ball. All right? Every Monday morning, we try to do a little crystal ball. We get the crystal ball or the magic 8 ball, throw out some questions, try to predict the future here a little bit, right? That's the gist of crystal ball, just to have a little fun, to change it up here a little bit. So let's start it off, since we haven't talked a lot of football, any football, because there really isn't anything to be talking about right now. Let's start off with a couple of Packers-related ones. Crystal ball, will Jordan Love win an MVP within 3 years? Will Jordan Love win his first MVP within 3 years? My crystal ball, I'm going to say no. I don't think he does. That's not a knock on Jordan Love. That's not to say that Jordan Love is going to be awful or a bum or play really bad or the Packers are going to be really bad. It has nothing to do with that. I'm going to play the odds in this one. And there's still a lot of incredibly talented players. It's essentially a quarterback award. You know, it's a quarterback award. Unless, if Saquon didn't win it last year, my vote would have went with Saquon. I just saying, my vote would have went with Saquon. But I feel like it's turned into just a straight up quarterback award. So you've got 32 options here. You still got a Patrick Mahomes out there, still Lamar Jackson, still a Josh Allen. The list goes on and on and on and on. I'm just going to play the odds, and I'm going to say he does not win an MVP within 3 years. Again, it doesn't mean that he won't ever. It doesn't mean anything about the state of the Packers or him as a player. Okay? Do I think he's going to win an MVP within 3 years? No. I don't. So, let's go with the next one. Will Aaron Rodgers, or let me rephrase this, who will have more touchdown passes between these two? Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love? Crystal ball, who will have more touchdown passes? Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love? I am going to go... I'm going to go Jordan Love. I pause for a little bit, though, because I feel like the Packers have a better running game with Josh Jacobs. So they could technically, if they get in the red zone, they may hand it off more to Josh Jacobs, and he may have more rushing touchdowns, which maybe takes a little bit off of Jordan Love's passing touchdowns. You got Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf. Come on, he might just target him all day and night and such. But I don't know if I trust Pittsburgh's offense fully with Arthur Smith, calling the plays. And I'm not completely dissing Arthur Smith in that, but I could see Aaron finishing with like 28 touchdown, 27, 28 touchdown passes, somewhere around there. I still feel like Jordan's going to eclipse 30. Now, I'm operating under the assumption that both quarterbacks are going to play every single game, but I could see Jordan Love having a few like short touchdown passes within the red zone, whether it's like to a Tucker Kraft or maybe a little HB screen to Josh Jacobs or whoever. I feel like Rodgers is probably at like the 28s, where I see Jordan's around 33. I'm going to go Jordan. I did pause for a little bit, because I feel like Pittsburgh's going to, at times, might have to pass more, because I feel like Green Bay's got a better running game. But I'm going to go Jordan with this one. How how many games will Brandon Woodruff appear in for the Brewers? Not win, but how many games will Brandon Woodruff play for the Brewers this year? All right, Crystal Ball, this one's a tough one. I don't think we're going to see Brandon Woodruff until July at some point. And if it's not till July, is it going to be before or after the All-Star break? Because he did a bullpen session. Sounds like he's going to do a little bit more here. I mean, just based off the timeline that he kind of gave, boy, I'm thinking after the All-Star break. So let's say it's after the All-Star break. I'm looking at the schedule here and just kind of doing a number 1, 2, 3. Where am I at here? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to say 10. Like 10 or 11. 10 or 11 games Brandon Woodruff plays for the Brewers this year. And there's no question that's down and maybe a little bit of a disappointment for some Brewers fans. And I would say Brandon Woodruff will be disappointed by that because it's unfortunate of a couple setbacks that had nothing to do with his shoulder. One, he couldn't prevent. I don't know how much he could have prevented the ankle one either, but I mean, a comebacker at 108 miles per hour off the elbow, the fact that there's still people blaming Woodruff for that is just mind-boggling to me, that I can't understand that at all. It's just awful luck. So I think we opened up the season saying, hey, maybe May we're going to see him. So you're probably doubling those amount of games, assuming that he would stay healthy from May till the end of the season. So it's probably a disappointment that it would only be about 10 or 11. But I think at this point, I'm going to go around 10 or 11 games that we're going to see Brandon Woodruff pitch for the Brewers this year. And then what's going to be really interesting is going to see Brandon Woodruff, what the market's going to be like for him after this season. Like, how well does he pitch in his games that he does play in this year? And then, because he's scheduled to be a free agent, what's that market going to be like for him? Is there going to be a big market for him? Because I think if he pitches really well, like he looks like the old Brandon Woodruff, I think there's going to be at least a couple teams that are going to be interested in him. Maybe even some contending teams out there that are looking for veteran pitchers to bring in for a year or two and be like, yeah, we'll bring him on for $11 million, $12 million, $13 million a year. Would he give the Brewers a little bit of a discount to stay in Milwaukee? I don't know. But to me, that's going to be fascinating in the upcoming offseason to see what Brandon Woodruff's market's going to be like. But I'm going to go 10, 11 appearances this year. Will Freddie Peralta be traded after this season? I'm going to say yes. My crystal ball says yes. Now, before everybody's like, what the heck are you talking about, dude? Couple things here. Over the weekend, I think it was a Friday, John Heyman from the New York Post had a little bit of a nugget in there saying that Freddie Peralta and his camp have been trying to get an extension done with the Brewers. And so far, no go. Freddie Peralta has one more year left. It's a club option for next year, which is about $8 million. That's not bad for the Brewers at all. That's an easy yes. But after that, he's an unrestricted free agent. We are entering Devin Williams, Corbin Burns-esque territory, with a pitcher entering the last year of a deal, and a pitcher that's probably due for a nice hefty raise. Freddie Peralta can command a nice number on the market. What helps him is that, yes, he'll be 31 when he hits free agency, but what helps him is that he's been pretty reliable and pretty darn healthy. He's kind of trending towards his second All-Star appearance this year. There will be a market for him. There will be teams willing to give him a nice contract. The Brewers, I wouldn't expect them being a team that is going to fork over $20-some million per year for Freddie Peralta, if that's the number. we've been down this road how many times? So I feel like entering next offseason, yes, that's going to happen, especially considering the amount of young starting pitchers that this team has and feels like, and not only has, but the young starters that have already gained some experience. Mizorowski, Logan Henderson, Robert Gasser is going to be back from his Tommy John. Chad Patrick, Quinn Priester. Those are just a handful of those guys. So, yeah, my crystal ball says I think so. How many trades will the Milwaukee Bucks make this offseason? Not free agent signings, trades. How many trades for the Bucks? I'm going to go 2. That's the first number that popped up in my head, a.k.a. the crystal ball. I'm going to go 2. Now, who are they? What are they? That is still muddy. It's not entirely clear. This does not include a Giannis trade. I'm operating with the assumption that Giannis will be with the Bucks this year. So, these 2 trades do not involve Giannis. I do think there will be a couple of trades, whether it involves their 2030 or 2031 first-round pick, or maybe a couple. Maybe they can find a suitor for Pat Connaughton and kind of shed that salary. But I do think there will be I'm going to go 2. I'm going to go 2 trades for the Bucks this offseason. Final crystal ball question. Ohtani is making his pitching debut tonight for the Dodgers. That kind of came out of nowhere, right? I mean, he was trending that way. He was getting some work in, but then it's like, bang! All right, he's going to make his debut today. Will we ever see another two-way player like Ohtani? Never say never, because probably for the longest time, we were like, yeah, we're not going to see another Ruth, a guy who hits massive home runs and also did a little bit of pitching. And then in steps Ohtani. But I'm going to say, in my lifetime, are we going to see another two-way player like Ohtani? I'm going to say no. Again, I'm going to play the odds on that. And when I say two-way player, I mean a successful pitcher and a successful hitter. I'm going to say no. Because I still feel like there are teams that are going to be, okay, if we're investing this amount of money into a guy who's a really good pitcher, that's what we want to focus on. Ohtani-type players are incredibly rare. And I'm just going to play the odds in this and say, not during my lifetime, bub. So that's crystal ball. That's your crystal ball. Let's wrap up the podcast with our walk-off segment, our final piece of opinion and commentary. And Ohtani is making his pitching debut for the Dodgers. And this is an incredibly rare thing, as we know from the last few years of watching Ohtani be a really good pitcher and a fantastic hitter. That's why everybody says it's Babe Ruth stuff. And I wish we could see it more, because a lot of these pitchers were probably really good hitters when they were younger, maybe even the best hitters on their teams. But these guys, once they get to the big leagues or they're getting prepped to go to the big leagues, teams want them to focus just on the pitching. I wish we could see more two-way players like this, a guy who could get a start every 5 days, but be in the lineup as a DH or maybe even playing another position. I don't know. I think that's good for baseball, and I wish we could see more of that. I wish more teams embrace that. But it's a money thing. They don't want him to get hurt. They want to try to protect him as much as possible. I just wish we could see that change, because I think that's fantastic to see a guy who's a really good pitcher but also a really good hitter. That's going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, again brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Man Cave Podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I'll talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.